your source for the latest rumors, news, and reviews in Hollywood. Welcome to Technicolor Blood. Here are your hosts, Chris and Terrence.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Technicolor Blood. We are so happy that you have once again joined us here. Talk about some movies. We got all kinds of news to get to, trailers, all that normal stuff we normally do. Really glad you guys joined us. My name's Chris. I'm here with Terrence. Terrence, how's your week been?
Not too bad. I'm looking forward to talking about some movies and the fact that nothing really interesting is coming out this weekend.
Yeah, we're gonna have to make stuff up.
That's kind of what we're best at.
Yeah, there's that like Muppet adult porn movie thing coming out.
That is so terrible looking.
And Peter Jackson already did it with
I know,
Meet
he
the Feebles.
perfected it. Yeah,
How
you
can
can't
you
do better
possibly?
than that. I kind of stepped on you right there, so let's just make it clear. The movie is called Meet the Feebles.
What did I call it?
Well, no, that's what you called it. I just spoke over you. I just want to make sure that the people at home can, if they're so inclined, go seek out this work of art from an Academy-winning director.
That's true. That's true. Peter Jackson had basically in his pocket Meet the Feebles,
Yes.
and a movie called The Frighteners,
Yes.
which was a horror movie that starred Michael J. Fox.
And is as bad as that combination would lead you to believe.
And he parlayed that into The Lord of the Rings. Yes. I'll never understand it. Another topic for another
Arguably,
time.
maybe, in some people's minds, the best trilogy of all time.
So bizarre. I mean, that's not true at all, but yes, it is definitely, it's arguable.
But whatever, let's not gloss over the fact, Meet the Feebles, you should watch it if you want. Just going to tease it this way, Muppet Cum Shot.
Yes, that actually does happen.
Yes,
You can't
Academy
be-
Award-winning Peter Jackson.
You can't be mad at us for bringing it up because that does happen.
Yes, it happens all over the place.
All right, so first piece of news this week. I will just go ahead and admit to all of you listening right now that I was not aware that Danny Boyle was slated to direct the next James Bond movie. I'm a big Danny Boyle fan. I mean, who isn't a Danny Boyle fan if you're a movie fan? But the little news update there is that he actually is not directing the Bond 25 movie anymore due to the ever-present creative differences. Terrence, I think it's safe to say that we're both pretty big fans of Danny Boyle, at least a good amount of his films.
I would agree to that.
Yeah, I'm not really a huge Bond fan, but I definitely would have seen this in the theater based on the fact that Danny Boyle was directing it. Any reaction to this news?
Well, I knew that he was attached to the project, but I really didn't think too much about it until he was no longer attached, and then suddenly I was disappointed. Because, like you, I'm not a huge Bond fan. I don't really follow who's attached to direct and who's not. And honestly, prior to Sam Mendes directing the last two, has anyone of any relevance directed a Bond film?
I don't think so, not in a while. And I'll be honest, I thought Sam Mendes was directing the next one too. I don't know why I thought that he wasn't.
He might have been linked to it at some point. It seems in Hollywood that if you do a good job, like the studio just gives you a trilogy. Mm-hmm. You know, and he only did two, so.
Yeah, and this also I believe well, I know for sure it's the last Bond film on that Daniel Craig is slated to do. Of course, he very famously was going to leave before, and they talked him into this one. So probably this will be his last one. I don't know. We'll find out. But I honestly don't care enough about James Bond to really follow it that closely.
Yeah, I mean, they're fine for what they are, you know, and I realize, obviously, though, they're diehard James Bond fans. I'm just not one of them.
Yeah, I hear you. The Beach, one of the most overly criticized good movies I think I've ever seen. I'm actually a big fan. I know a lot of you out there, for some reason, have something against Leo. Like, post-Titanic, everyone hated him for, I guess, because he was, the pretty boy, the flavor of the month. But I really think The Beach is a good movie. And Danny Boyle directed that, and for some reason, a lot of people hate it, and I don't get that.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mystery. And, it's one of those moments in time where I think people who didn't just hate Leo for no apparent reason were like, oh, wait a minute, because this guy had everything. Like, he had every offer in the world coming to him. He was the hottest young commodity in Hollywood. And he was like, no, I'm not interested in the franchises and the action movies and the next big rom-com or whatever. I want to go make this movie with this director that nobody's ever heard of, based on a book that nobody ever read, where I play a character that nobody's going to like. And I really respect that. And, the book is fantastic. The movie is great. And I think that was one of those moments where those of us who obviously Danny Boyle had already established himself with Train Spotting and Shallow Grave, and people who paid attention knew who he was, and they were looking forward to what he was going to do. This was his first swing at an American film, and most people kind of disregarded it. But yeah, you and I liked it, and it was kind of what introduced us to Tilda Swinton as well.
For sure, yeah. That's one of those underrated flicks. We segued from something we were not really big fans of into something we are big fans of, but that's how it works. We go on tangents.
The important thing here is we're going to watch whatever Danny Boyle does.
Yeah, for sure.
If he makes a James Bond movie, then we're going to go with him to make a James Bond movie. And if he decides, hey, the restraints are too tight, I can't make the kind of movie that I want to make, then hey, I'm all for him moving on and doing something. Because, he's a big enough player now that he can just make whatever he wants to make.
Oh, definitely. No doubt. Academy Award winner.
Yep.
All right, a little bit of TV news. We work in some TV here and there. Came down, I think, yesterday that the Big Bang Theory's current season, or the upcoming season that premieres in September, is going to be its last. Apparently, Jim Parsons, Houston product, Jim Parsons is going to be moving on to other things. He's obviously, they can't do that show without him. So I'm not real clear on the contractual aspect, because I thought they had signed an extended deal where they had a couple of years left, but maybe that's not the case.
Yeah, I think the last contract actually just covered 2 years.
Okay.
I believe at the time there was a lot of talk that they were signing up for 5 years.
Right. I think that's what happened. I got twisted up with the years. So because
Yeah.
they wouldn't let them walk away from that when it's such a juggernaut. So,
and as CBS was working hard, they wanted to keep the show going. They were trying to get everybody to ink a deal to come on for 2 more seasons after the current one that they're shooting now. And like you said, Jim Parsons was the one that they couldn't get to agree. And wisely, if you don't have Sheldon, you don't have a show. Yeah,
it's a tough deal. I obviously, the guy's been doing it for a long time. The show's run its course. I think we can all be, it's fun and all that, but it has run its course.
Yeah, the best years are behind it.
Yeah, the character, I'm sure, in Jim Parsons' mind, is old and tired. And
12 years, I think I read somewhere that they said this would be the longest running multi-camera show in history.
Yep, that's correct. And, and another aspect of it that I guess people don't really care about this sort of thing, but I like it. It's the fact that they're still going to go out with high ratings.
Oh, yeah.
So many shows it gets pounded into the ground until, the show is terrible and the ratings have fallen off. This gives them a chance to go out because, even their diminished ratings from last season are still enormously huge ratings.
Fantastic ratings.
So, good for him. I'm sure the rest of the cast is disappointed because they're not going to have a chance to make $40 million, $1 million each episode for 2 years.
I believe the number that's been thrown around is that CBS was willing to sign for 2 additional seasons. They were willing to pay the original main 4 stars a combined total of $50 million.
Yeah. So all those other people, all of them will never have a chance to make that money back. So I'm sure there's some bitterness there, but it's not like he's breaking an existing contract. So you just got to. He
fulfilled everything, and not for nothing. You look at that entire cast, and he's the one that's had the most success outside of the show. He actually has the incentive to move on. He's been in films. He was in Hidden Figures. He just wrapped up a theatrical run on Broadway with like 3 or 4 other big name actors. Zachary Quinto, I think, was one of them. So he's got a lot of things going on. He's a executive producer on the Young Sheldon show. He's making things happen for himself. His career is on the upward trajectory. So strike while the iron's hot. I don't blame him.
Yeah, obviously we're not gonna cry tears over the rest of the cast. They've made a ton of money and had a lot of success. And man, that syndication money is going to be flowing until they die and beyond.
For sure.
Yeah. So Big Bang Theory ending after this next upcoming season. So if you're a fan, see it while you can. Next up, Shane Black's Predator movie. The projections right now are showing about a $30 million opening weekend, which is really bad.
Yeah, that's no bueno.
Any time of year, especially when you have an established franchise piece like that, where it's an existing character that everyone knows. And this, of course, is after what we know now are 2 rounds of reshoots. And apparently one of those included completely redoing the ending. All bad signs. Reshoots, always a bad sign. Redoing the ending, really bad sign.
Yes.
proposed $30 million opening for a Predator movie also bad.
Yeah, that means that test audiences are unimpressed by this film. And it's especially disappointing because, this is the film that he's doing coming off of the massive unexpected success of Iron Man 3. Right. So, I mean, he was poised to call his shot. He said, hey, hand me the Predator franchise and I can rebuild that for you. And it does not look like that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And the trailer for it does not look good.
No, not good at all. I mean, my interest in that movie is tepid at best. I mean, not even really nostalgia gets me excited about that. The first Predator movie was awesome. It's obviously a classic. Yeah. Everything else they've made in that genre, whether they're throwing aliens in or whether it's Predator, but I mean, it's just not been good. So it's kind of a weird project. It didn't really seem like one to me that people would get super, super excited about. Yeah. To have a new standalone Predator, but I mean, with Hollywood these days, it just seems like that's the deal. It's a remake, a reboot. And I'd love for Shane Black is an original guy. He made his bones writing. He's obviously got a lot of original thought, but here we are doing a retread. And
so here's the thing that I'm curious about. Like he took the Iron Man franchise that was not working out so well for them. Iron Man 2 obviously was an underperformer, and it's, arguably the worst Marvel film ever made. He came along, made Iron Man 3, put that character back on, well, I guess the character was just fine, but put that franchise back on the map, did a really excellent job, and I would assume Marvel would have given him any Marvel property that he wanted, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I never heard anything about them even discussing that, but I mean, I don't think you would be coming out of left field to suggest that he probably turned down a Marvel project to do the Predator movie.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if that's just like a passion project for him. That's like maybe one of his all-time favorite movies or something, and he just decided that he had to make it for some reason.
Are we overlooking something painfully obvious? Did he do a script right for the original Predator? I mean, that would have been. I
think he did.
Right in that zone where he was
sort of up and coming.
Yeah, he was the man.
So maybe he's trying to right what he thinks is a wrong. Yeah. From him not getting a screenwriting credit for that or something.
Yes,
that's possible. Yeah, so I guess I'm not sure when that one's slated to come out. Is that coming out during the old dumping season?
Yeah, I know it's coming out real soon.
Yeah, so maybe not quite dumping season, but not in the hot zone for sure.
I know we should probably just move past the topic of Predators, but I just want to touch on the fact that I think the fundamental element that everyone misses when they're making a sequel to the original Predator film is that the Predator, the monster, is just 50% of the equation. Right. The popularity of the original film is Arnold Schwarzenegger and his band of bros trekking around in the jungle. Like you can't just take one half of that equation and make a successful movie. It just doesn't work. Arnold has himself tried numerous times to do that. It doesn't work without the monster. And they keep trying with these Predator movies, and it doesn't work without the Arnold and his bros half of the equation. You need them both.
It definitely feels like a rental at best.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and best if you're drunk when you watch it.
Yeah, or worse. Other news coming out. Let's see. We talked about recently the Academy. The Academy is going to be coming out with a new category for achievement in popular film. We had a long discussion about that. Check one of the back episodes for it. So it seems as if maybe they're already starting to rethink their thoughts on that. Which
that did not take long.
Yeah. So what do you think? What do you attribute this to?
I mean, it just has to be the overwhelmingly negative response that announcement got from the general public.
So were we in the kind of the minority and feeling generally positive about that? I mean,
I think we were.
I think you were more positive about it than I was, but sort of by the end of the discussion, I could see the reasons why it would be good for movies as a whole. Yeah. Which is exactly what the Academy Awards should care most about.
Right. But I mean, obviously we want them to like and support the important aspects of filmmaking. At the same time, there's just the business aspect of they have to have ratings, it has to be a successful show, it has to be worth them doing this crazy circus that they put on. Mm-hmm. And I think adding this category was an effort to accomplish the second goal without diminishing the first goal. Obviously, the general public didn't agree, and sounds like they're rethinking that.
Yeah, I don't know, man. And the idea that they're thinking about delaying it a year, I don't really see what that solves. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
if that's their fix, it's just like, let's keep thinking about this and delay it a year. Why? I mean, so people can be pissed off about it for another year? I don't really understand the thinking behind that. You know, it might have helped if we talked about when they made the announcement, they were very vague about it, about what
Yeah.
it means, about what it means for the eligibility for other awards. And someone else from the Academy came out and gave a little bit of clarification, but there was really no news cycle on that. They didn't promote whatever the additional information was. So we're still sort of in the dark about exactly what that means.
And that might be the reason for the year-long delay. Like if they say, well, look, we're not going to do it for this year's awards, we're going to do it for the following year's awards, and that gives them a chance to really figure out what the hell it is they want to do with this.
But see, that's a really big missed opportunity because, I mean, you got Black Panther.
Yeah.
You got, you've got all these big budget movies, like you got Infinity War. You got all these huge movies that could really draw some more audience members in. Are you going to have 2 massive Marvel releases next year that have that same potential? I don't think that's on the slate.
I mean, the Black Panther is the perfect opportunity to usher in this category because here's a movie that's massively popular. Popular here in the U.S., massively popular around the world, and it also has this added element to it beyond just the entertainment value that makes it very, very significant without it actually being necessarily a great movie. I mean, it just seems like the perfect opportunity, and you're right, pushing it back a year. You're not going to have that. Maybe they've got another movie that'll come out next year that can do that, but this just seemed like a perfect storm scenario.
I've already seen the think pieces out there about people being insulted that they're just assuming, well, they're creating this just so they can give an award to Black Panther while not putting it up for the real award, which it should be nominated for. So you can't really make any sort of announcement these days without it just being prejudged to the nth degree. Yeah. And you know, like you, I know. I mean, it was fun. It was a great movie. I had a good time. Okay, it wasn't a great movie, but it was a great movie going experience. Yes. You know, it's definitely one of the better Marvel movies.
Yeah, I would agree with that, for sure.
But I mean, it had its issues, just like every other comic book movie or any other movie for that matter had issues.
Right.
So, I don't know. I mean, there's this whole like collision of movie snobs and you know, casual movie fans and comic book fans and, you know, the Academy writers, and there's all these forces that are sort of tugging at each other. And, you know, for you and I think, you know, we certainly lean closer to movie snobs, but we also understand that bringing in the popular element is important to keep movies going. You got to get young people into movies.
Absolutely.
So I don't know if it's the old guard that's pushing back on this. I'll be interested to see if there's going to be more news about what exactly is making them get cold feet about this.
Yeah. Hopefully they'll make some sort of announcement to clarify things.
Yeah, something clear. That would be nice.
Yeah. And unusual.
Forbes released their annual list of the 10 highest paid actors of the year. I think they did actresses last week, or a couple of weeks ago, and they did the actors this week. George Clooney was in the top spot. I was surprised to see that because I don't remember seeing him in a movie, but obviously it doesn't take into account just earnings from making movies.
But before we go there, seriously, when was the last time he was in a movie?
Man,
like I vaguely remember him in something from like 2016, like a movie nobody saw, but I remember him popping up in it.
I really don't. I don't recall off the top of my head, which is bizarre.
Turns out he's just been busy making money elsewhere.
Yes, tequila. He has made a massive ton of money selling his tequila. So, I mean, that's impressive. I guess he's moved on to his next, you know, part of life where he's established all his businesses and all that. Now he's killing it he's doing everything. He's not leaving anything for us.
Yeah. So I don't know all the details exactly, right? But I think he started a tequila company with like 2 of his maybe childhood friends, 2 of his buddies at least. And all 3 of them worked on the company, built it up. And they finally, this past year, sold it. I want to say they sold it for $700 million up front and then $300 million to be paid out over several years or whatever. Goodness. So his split of that was, I don't know, $290 million, somewhere in that neighborhood. And then, you know,
impressive.
On top of that, he made probably another $10 million just being the Hollywood bigwig that he is.
Yep.
And anyway, that was enough to put him at the top of the list.
Yep. In case you're interested, Mark Wahlberg was last year's number 1 with $68 million. And he did not show up on the list this year.
Didn't have a Transformers movie.
Yeah, which he's I guess he's getting in late with his what is it, 22 Mile that we talked about last week, 2 Mile.
Yeah, and that does not pay Michael Bay money.
No, not at all. Yeah, so little news there for the high paid actors. I guess I shouldn't gloss over the actresses, just in case you're out there listening and saying, why'd you gloss over the actresses? Scarlett Johansson was #1 this year.
No shock.
At $40 million. I'm sure most of that was from her Marvel earnings. I'm curious what kind of, like, if she gets points like her other co-stars get points. I would assume, I would hope that a lot of the actors that are in the run of those Marvel movies figured out pretty quickly to bypass salary in lieu of points.
Yeah, I don't think they always have that choice, but I mean,
right,
certainly
the big names.
Yeah, the big names for sure.
Yeah.
Do you by any chance happen to have what Mark Wahlberg's take was? I'm just curious to know how that measures against what Scarlett Johansson made.
$68 million from last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh wait, so he wasn't on the list this year. So who's #2 on the list this year?
I don't actually have the list in front of me.
Oh.
I know Dwayne Johnson was on. Oh, there you go. I'm sorry. I do have it in front of me. I'm multitasking and I'm terrible at it. In fact, Terrence might have been cluing me into the fact that I did have it in front of me.
I did in fact point at the list.
It was The Rock.
Oh, of course.
Yes. You wouldn't understand why I just screamed that unless you watched him when he was a wrestler.
There's always a lot of screaming in wrestling.
Yes, The Rock was at $65 million, so he just got edged out last year.
Okay, so The Rock at 65, Scarlett Johansson at 40. Now, obviously, that's a huge discrepancy, but The Rock does like 3 movies a year, all of which do big box office. Scarlett Johansson does 1 movie a year.
One big movie.
Right.
Yeah.
And 50% of the time, they just piss people off.
Yeah, she's got a nice career in that she's sort of made her way enough to where she can be in her big franchise movie, and then she can do these little like sci-fi and indie things, like Under the Skin, which I've mentioned before. I'm a big fan of from a couple of years ago. So I hope she continues to take chances like that and just doesn't sit back and rely on the big paychecks come in. She seems like the type that would like to continue to do that.
Yeah. I wish there was a way to like buy stock in actors.
Yeah,
because I think we'd be really good at that.
I agree with you, but I also would like to be able to control the role choices they have.
Yes, absolutely.
Decidedly less ability to control that.
Yeah. The first step would be going to Scarlett Johansson and explaining to her, you're not Asian, you're not a guy, let's stop picking those kind of roles. They're not really going to work for you.
Yeah, interesting that in a year where for the first time in her career she had some bad pub, she was also the top earning actress. Yeah,
that is interesting. But I mean, I guess you gotta make the movies to make the money to get the attention.
Yep, and similar to Scarlett, similar to George Clooney, this year's #2 actress earnings wise was Angelina Jolie, another one that I don't remember seeing her in anything.
Yeah, but
she's a producer. She's got other side businesses, so she was one of the highest paid actresses of this year, even though she didn't really do much acting. Man, again, also some negative pub this year. Yeah. Not like Scarlett's, but still.
I feel like that's got to be a commentary on how women are paid in Hollywood.
Yeah, true. And it'd be interesting if they sort of could have 2 lists, one with total earnings and one that's actually related to their acting. Yeah, I would like to see that as well.
Absolutely.
All right, coming up in the next segment, 2 white guys talk about BLACKKKLANSMAN. We saw a little movie called BLACKKKLANSMAN this past weekend.
It's an underground film. Probably no one's heard of it.
Yeah, you may know it from such podcasts as Last Week talking about seeing it. So we saw it, and kind of like a lot of Spike Lee movies, I liked it when I was watching it. I didn't really think about it too much afterwards. It's in the upper tier of the Spike Lee movies. I guess I'm sort of hedging a little bit. Yeah, I didn't love it. I guess I'm supposed to love it. I mean, I liked it when I was watching it, and we're going to get into it here. And I have a lot of good things to say about several parts of the movie, but it didn't really and of course, it's not made for me.
Well,
it's made for everybody, but it's not made for me, if you know what I mean.
I'm definitely going to argue that point with you.
Okay, that's fine. Go for it.
Well, first of all, you're a racist son of a bitch. This movie was totally made for you.
It did star Alec Baldwin as Dr. Kenneth Beauregard.
Okay. Yeah.
No? Okay. Well, I thought I'd try that out.
Okay. So, yeah, before we get in it, overall, I really enjoyed the movie. I mean, I really enjoyed it because it's an enjoyable movie.
Agreed.
I just want to make that clear right now because I know for whatever reason, a lot of people have issues with Spike Lee.
Yeah.
And there's this concept that everything he makes is going to be very preachy and very heavy-handed, and, you know, the message will override everything else. And in the case of this film, that's not the case at all. This is an entertaining film.
Yeah.
The trailer hints at it, and it's absolutely true. It's got a very, very strong element of humor in it, running through the entire thing. And almost all of the actors were alerted to that. Not quite all.
Yes.
So, you know, you watch this movie, and yeah, it's about some heavy things. Obviously, it's about the Klan. It's about segregation. It's about a whole lot of things like that. And, you know, we'll get into that. But overall, it's just an entertaining movie. It's 2 hours where you're going to laugh, you're going to have some suspense, you're going to feel some things. It's just a solid film. Now, the flip side of that is, with Spike Lee, you do expect that there's also going to be this other level to it. And there is an element added on to the very end that sort of gives it that, but that's almost outside of the film itself.
Yeah.
The actual movie itself, it's almost feather light.
Yeah. And that was a little bit surprising. Like you said, the star of the movie, John David Washington, Denzel's son, of course, he was in on the comedy the whole time.
Oh yeah.
And
a great comedic actor.
Yeah, fast and loose. Like, this guy came out of nowhere. He is clearly going to have a long, successful career.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'll do everything he can to separate himself from his dad. But
if he chooses to make that separation by spending some time just making comedic or humorous movies, I mean, I think the sky's the limit for him, because his timing, his delivery, his sort of just looseness with stuff that's clearly scripted to be funny. I mean, it's just dead on.
Yeah, and he, you know, if you didn't know out there, I'm sure obviously he's been around acting his entire life with his dad, but and I don't know if he always has had designs on getting into acting, but he was an athlete. He played in the NFL for I think the St. Louis Rams before they moved to Los Angeles. He was on their practice squad. I don't know if he actually ever made it into regular season games, but he played for the Rams. And then a natural bridge to that, he played a wide receiver on a pro football team in the HBO TV show Ballers, and he was hilarious in that. And I remember watching that. That's the first time I ever seen him as an actor. And while I was watching him in that role, I kept thinking to myself, he reminds me of someone, and I can't quite nail it. And then eventually he made a sound that sounded exactly like his dad, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks. So, and to his credit, you know, I'm sure he's doing everything he can to not sound so much like his dad, and I think he's having to do it on purpose, because when I've seen him in interviews, he just sounds exactly like his dad.
Okay,
not to get away from the movie, I just on that actor.
I had no background with this guy at all. I've never seen Ballers, so this was my introduction to him as an actor. And I had heard that it was Denzel's son, but I think I just sort of forgotten, or it just didn't resonate while I was watching the movie. So I was oblivious to that. It wasn't until after the movie that piece of information resurfaced. So I was just enjoying his performance, completely separate from any connection to his dad. Of course, after I realized that was his dad, and heard other people making the comment that he sounds just like his dad, in my head I was thinking, well, I don't know that that's true, because I never had that thought while I was watching him.
Yeah.
So to test that theory, I went back and watched the trailer with my eyes closed. And oh my God, he sounds exactly like Denzel Washington.
Yeah, and if you, like I said, if you watch an interview where he's not on guard about that, I mean, it's So, but clearly, I mean, I want to make sure that he gets proper credit. Like,
for sure,
he is going to be his own thing, and there's no doubt about it. So,
yeah,
I look forward to a long career there.
Yeah, and I want to be clear here. We're not overhyping him as the next Denzel Washington, but what we are saying is that he is a very, very talented actor in his own right, and those skills are on display in this movie.
For sure, yeah. Yeah, so back on the movie, I really liked the stuff. So no spoilers, of course, but there's a couple of rallies in the movie. Obviously, if you've seen the trailer, you know what the movie's about. So no spoilers there. But at some point where Kwame Ture, which ignorant on my part, while I was watching it, I assumed was sort of a made up character for the movie in the vein of other types of that type of guy back then.
Right.
Actually, a real guy.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm learning stuff on our own podcast.
Corey Hawkins played him and
Did an excellent job as well.
awesome. He's best known, I think, for he played Dr. Dre in the Straight Outta Compton movie, which
okay.
I was a big fan of. That movie was a lot of fun for me, but different topic. So that the scenes that they shot at those, I guess, rallies, best way to put it, they Spike did this thing while Kwame Ture was talking where he framed a lot of the faces of the people watching him in like very soft light, like lit from below, them sort of like looking upward, and I thought that was really beautifully done. He was I think trying to get across the the impact on these young lives, and when you put it in the context of what was going on in the country at that time, it's unavoidable to think of what's going on in the country at this time and how many things back then that were going on are still going on today.
Yeah, I just want to jump in and say that that speech that leads into the shots that you're talking about opens with him describing the features of an African-American person in detail and trying to contrast them with the Western European expectation of what beauty is.
Right.
And so as he's describing those features and explaining that they are beautiful and they should be appreciated for their beauty, that's when we get those shots of the audience members just beautifully lit, isolated from the background in these very
like portraits.
Yeah, portraits. Yeah.
I thought that was really, really beautifully done. And I'm not black, but I felt something from those shots. I felt like I got what he was going for there. So I thought that was really powerful. And then I guess we also have to bridge this over to the one actor in the movie who, for some reason, didn't seem to understand that it was a light movie. It was more light and feathery, like you said, than I think we all expected.
Yeah, but before we drop the hammer, let's make it crystal clear that he was doing what he was directed to do.
Yeah.
I don't think his part was scripted to have a lot of humor, and I don't think his director encouraged him to inject humor into it.
Yeah.
I think he did a really great job. It just felt like he was in another lane than every other performer in the film.
Yeah. So that's Adam Driver.
Yes. Kylo Ren from the Star Wars films.
Yeah. And I mean, it makes sense, I guess, because, well, again, you've seen the trailer. His life was immediately more at risk than Ron Stallworth's was, than the black Ron Stallworth was. Because
he's obviously the white police detective who has to go undercover as somebody who he's not.
Yeah. And there's some things in there that get into some of the criticisms that I have of the movie. Chiefly, like, I don't really understand what the motivation is to have the black Ron Stallworth make the phone calls and then have the white Ron Stallworth go to the meetings for them to have to share a brain, when this could have been just kicked off by the black Ron Stallworth character and then have the white Ron Stallworth pick up the phone calls from there, and then just have the black Ron Stallworth consulting and liaising on the case as you continue. I don't really understand that. And maybe if I read the book, it would make more sense. There might be something else that colors that more if I had the full story.
Yeah, I'm not sure. My suspicion is simply that, they wanted the black Ron Stallworth to be the main character, and so you have to keep him as the character that's driving forward this police investigation. And the only way to keep him involved in that role was to have him making those phone calls, interacting with all the characters that then the white Ron Stallworth would interact with in person.
Yeah.
But your point is absolutely valid. In reality, it just didn't really make any sense.
Yeah. And, obviously we don't want to get spoilery. So I think the movie had a good conclusion. I thought the ending was pretty good. A lot of endings I see I'm kind of unsatisfied by, but I'll just leave it at that, because obviously we're not going to get into spoilers here. But
okay, let me just interrupt you right there. The thing that we're not talking about, is it an actual spoiler?
I mean, it's the end of the movie, so it's not really a spoiler. I want people to discover stuff on their own. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So it's kind of, it's not really a spoiler, but I just don't want to have people thinking a certain way when they go into the movie.
Yeah.
I'm watching out for you guys in that respect.
I'm just trying to. It's so important to a review of this movie. Or, okay, let me backtrack. It's not important to a review of this movie, but it is critically important to an actual discussion of this film. Mm-hmm. So I'm a bit conflicted right now because we're presenting this as though it's a movie review, but...
Go for it. You've had enough time to turn off mild spoiler. It's not really a spoiler, but go ahead.
Okay, so the movie's story wraps up. The film comes to a conclusion. It ends the way the movie was obviously meant to end. But then tacked on to the film after that point is real footage taken from current events, specifically the march in Charlottesville from a year ago. Mm-hmm. That was the alt-right march that led to confrontations between the protesters and the counter-protesters that ultimately culminated in somebody driving their car into the crowd, mm-hmm.
which ended up
injuring several, but actually killing one of the people in the crowd. Mm-hmm. The movie ends with this footage cut together that includes not only footage of the car driving into the crowd, but the reaction to it, footage of the march around it, maybe even a little bit of footage of the news covering it. Anyway, it's very, very stark. It's very, very in your face. And compared to a film which is very cinematic, so it's very smooth, and the drama in it is heavily manufactured, mm-hmm. and then heavily stylized by the nature of Spike Lee being a very stylistic director. This footage is just the opposite of that. It's just raw.
So raw.
It's in your face. It's on this big screen in front of you. There's no looking away, and impactful. If the movie had not included that, it would have been more of an academic expression, I think, mm-hmm. of the racial issues that I was trying to talk about. Mm-hmm. But the inclusion of that real footage at the end of it, edited brilliantly the way it was, I mean, it's just, it left the theater in stunned silence.
Yep.
And it forced people to think about what they had just watched. Yeah. It was brilliant. It made the movie for me. It took that movie from being a entertaining movie with a lot of humor and an enjoyable 2 hours to something worthy of a greater discussion, and giving it the thought and consideration that Lee was going for.
There's so much horrible thought and so much stuff that's going on in the movie that is just so ingrained in society, so ingrained in the characters, that you look at now and you say, you know, oh my God, that person is bordering on a monster.
Yes.
And it's so prevalent in that movie. But like we said, the movie is a little bit light. So at the end of the film, like you said, it's just like a punch to the face reminder, like,
right.
whoa, here's what this is really about.
Yes.
Like, we're glad you enjoyed the entertainment part of it. We're glad we got our message across. We had some fun with it. It was serious in parts, but bam, right at the end, it was just like a shot, man. It was like you said, you couldn't look away. Seeing that footage, that raw footage from Charlottesville on a big screen, that was even more impactful than I realized that it would, because I think we've all seen all that footage before.
Absolutely.
But man, seeing it on the big screen without, talking heads talking over it, without, 4 commentators on the screen at the same time, just juxtaposes against the end of that movie. I mean, that was definitely powerful. So I give him credit.
And the contrast of the evil in the movie being essentially depicted by Topher Grace, mm-hmm. who, not a knock on him, but I mean, it's Topher Grace. So it's, by its very nature, kind of humorous. You're not really taking him seriously as a villainous presence or whatever. To go from that to footage of a real life monster plowing his car into a crowd of people, mm-hmm. just running over people, in totally uncensored footage. I mean, it is whiplash inducing.
Yeah. So now that the Academy for several years now has had 9 or 10 nominations, I feel pretty confident in saying that this will be one of them. I
would expect, absolutely.
Yeah, and you know, Spike Lee will also get a nomination for it. What I'm curious to ask you though is, do you think John David Washington might work his way into the 5 nominated actors?
Man, that's a really great question. He does a really, really good job. It's just that the role that he was given is not typically the role that you see nominated for Best Actor.
Yeah.
I mean, at no point is he ever asked to, really emote anything. He's not torn up.
Yeah.
We don't learn anything about his character. We know absolutely nothing about his background. We know absolutely nothing about what he's going through on a personal level as he's leading this police investigation.
Yeah.
It's essentially a procedural for all intents and purposes.
Which is funny because I feel like he absolutely could have pulled that off had Spike wanted to go that way with it. And it's funny because this is the story of this is the story of Ron Stallworth. This is his book come to life. But at the end of the movie, I wanted to see more of Ron Stallworth, the cop. Like I would like whatever he continued to do. I'm interested enough to see something that would follow what he did afterwards, and maybe got more in depth like that with his actual getting to know him, getting to follow him home, to get to see what goes on in his head.
It would have gone a long way to having him have a roommate, like a person outside of the events that you can see him describing what he's going through at work as part of these ongoing investigations. The only socializing you see him do is with a character who is also part of one of his investigations.
Yeah, and that I think that's one of my frustrations with the movie is that, like we talked about, John David Washington played it pretty light, as I'm sure, like we talked about, he was directed to do, and I felt like it was sort of a loaded weapon that wasn't fired. They could have gone a totally different way with that character, and again, not knowing the actual real story, not having read the book, I don't know how he actually truly was. Yeah. But that was a little point of frustration for me because they actually set it up perfectly right at the beginning when he goes to the Black Power rally, and he's conflicted about what he's hearing because he's a cop and he's black. And he sits around and he hears what these guys in the office say all the time, and the 2 or 3 guys who are like extreme racist cops. He hears what they say, and here he is supposed to be infiltrating this Black Power rally, and he's hearing some things that he definitely does not disagree with, and there's all that conflict, and it's right. So I thought the whole movie was going to be based on his extreme conflict with having to pull from those two sides.
Yes.
But it never really took shape like that.
No, it did not. Yeah, I think it felt to me anyway that Spike Lee had set out to make an accessible movie. Like, this movie was meant to be wide open and attract the widest audience it could and entertain them as a movie.
Yeah.
And so a lot of those things that maybe we would have liked to have seen and that would have spoke more to the black experience at this point in history, I think were left out of the film or toned down a great deal.
So it was made for me, is what you're saying. That's fair. Yeah, so, I mean, just to wrap up on BLACKKKLANSMAN, definitely worth seeing in the theater. I mean, it's not really like one of those like massive visual experiences, but Spike Lee is one of those guys where, a great, beautifully composed shot is not swinging a camera in circles and sweeping down and crane shots. I mean, like I said, that scene at the rally where he's just shooting these portraits, and he's always had a pretty good style. It's not, I don't think it's as distinctive as a lot of other top directors, but each movie on its own always has sort of a very distinctive look to it, and this one specifically, it stood out to me more. The visual style stood out to me a little bit more than a couple of his more recent movies. I don't know if you feel the same.
I do agree with that completely. And I want to say this film, too, includes what I'm starting to think might be a signature camera shot of his, where he will put the actor in question on the dolly with the camera, or in some cases maybe a separate dolly. But regardless, the result is the actor and the camera both move while the background, of course, stays static. But when you're watching that on screen, the result is the person is locked in the frame and the background is just sort of floating behind them. And it's a very, I mean, it's an artistic shot, but he uses it in a lot of his films, and I noticed it here again. So I'm starting to wonder now if it's actually something he uses in all of his films, and if I was just more observant, I would have picked up on that.
Yeah, I would describe that shot. He has definitely done it before. I would describe it as disconcerting in a positive way, if that makes sense.
Right. Yes.
Like it's a little bit jarring at first.
Yes.
But it locks you into the shot. Like it forces you to really lock into it.
And it usually stands out because he's not a guy who uses a lot of, for lack of a better word, camera tricks.
Right.
So when he does add that to a film, it really stands out.
Yeah, he still uses dolly track.
Yeah, he does.
That's kind of a rare thing these days.
I'd be curious to know if he's one of those guys who also shoots on real film.
Oh yeah, that's a good question. I bet if we did some light research on that, we could probably find out the answer. I'm kind of curious, like if it's just the old guard guys who are doing that, or if everyone's just sort of given up now. Because if you think about that from a director standpoint, we're old school, but look how much more you can shoot in a faster time.
Absolutely.
So
I kind of feel that maybe Spielberg was the bulwark against that, and once he gave in and said, all right, I'll shoot digital, everyone else was just like, well, okay, I guess we all will too.
Right, yeah. He's definitely the guy to take the lead on stuff like that. Yeah, so BLACKKKLANSMAN, definitely worth your time.
Yeah, and I'd be kind of curious if we could get some feedback from people listening. When we review a movie, do you just want a review where we avoid spoilers and we just give you our thoughts and our opinion on the movie? Or would you prefer something that's more like an actual discussion and we're just like, we're going to talk about what happens? And if you haven't seen the movie, then maybe we give you stuff to think about while you are watching it. Or alternatively, maybe you don't want to listen to what we're going to say until after you've had a chance to watch it. I would just be interested to get some feedback on that.
Sounds good. Yeah. And I mean, maybe we could just do a little part at the end where we say, okay, here come the spoilers, and we just get it all out of the way. I mean, really it contributes to the greater discussion, but we're, obviously we're new and evolving, and we're completely open to hearing any suggestions you guys might have out there.
Yeah. The goal is to not suck. So if you're sitting at home going, wow, these guys suck, well, that's a mistake. So
for now, we'll settle for suck less, and then eventually we'll get to not suck.
Yeah, help us out.
Yeah. All right, coming up in the next segment, we are going to have a real quick discussion about our most positive in-theater movie experiences. We teased this last week. I think it's a good topic. We actually have a couple to run by you. So we talked recently about how much we love actually going to the theater, seeing a movie in the theater, seeing everyone's reactions. Terrence and I are jaded. We know too much about the behind-the-scenes stuff and how movies work, so we're always watching it with that kind of an eye. So I would say for both of us, we probably don't get as wrapped up in a movie as the filmmakers probably would want us to.
Or at least it's rare.
Yeah, but we both love seeing people that are wrapped up in it. So I'm going to rapid fire a few of these that I remember from my in-movie theater experiences. Now, one was many years ago, Home Alone. Seeing that in the theater, in a packed theater during the Christmas season, I don't think I can think of another movie I've seen that had more loud, continuous laughter than Home Alone in the movie theater. Similar to that, and this is sort of random, but when Liar Liar came out with Jim Carrey, that for whatever reason, the crowd I saw that was just on fire. They loved that movie. So those two to start out with. Now, two other ones that are more serious. You knew this was coming. Hereditary.
Here we go again.
And okay, no spoilers, but if you've seen the movie, you know the scene I'm talking about.
I have not.
Dead silence in the theater. Dead silence. Like a vacuum sucked all the life out of the audience. It was amazing. So there's that one. And then the last one I'm going to bring it up, American History X.
Oh.
I saw
I already know what you're talking about.
I saw American History X in a little art house theater in Houston, Texas, many, many years ago. There was probably 15, 16 people in the theater. And don't care about spoilers because it's a very old movie. There's the famous scene where Ed Norton has the guy on the curb and he delivers the curb stomp to one of the most sickening Foley artist sounds I've ever heard in my life. And 4 people got up and walked out of the movie.
Oh, wow.
When that scene happened. So don't want to belabor too much on this, but that is probably my number one experience as far as something just so incredible that happened in a movie theater. Just one for fun, I'll throw in at the end. I can't remember if it was The Mummy or The Mummy Part 2. You were there, if I'm not mistaken. Guy lit up a cigar during the movie. Lit up a cigar. So that was a totally different kind of experience. He was
And that's
sitting right
the
behind
only
us.
reason you remember one of the Mummy movies.
Yes, and nobody said anything to him. Like, everyone was just terrified of he's got a cigar, he must be tough. I don't really understand that. So Terrence, do you have any?
Yeah, hearing you
mind?
talk about these, it does remind me of one that I think is worth mentioning, and that was, as we mentioned earlier, horror movies are a great film to go see in a theater because the audience reaction can just make scary stuff terrifying. And usually there's not much of a reaction because, most horror films are just teen slasher movies and, they are what they are. But I will always remember when the Blair Witch Project came out.
Ah, yes.
That was kind of the world's introduction to the found footage film. And somehow the marketing for that movie was so effective that people in that audience did not know if they were looking at something real or something fake. It's mind-blowing to think about today, but that was the case then. That somehow the marketing for that worked. And I remember watching that movie and, the audience was all ages, all demographics. It wasn't just like, a bunch of teenagers. And toward the end of the movie, again, it's not even worth not saying spoilers because the movie was so low budget, it doesn't even really have a payoff. But just the relentless, suspenseful nature of the movie just kept building and building and building. And at the end, it gets very, 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 very tense. And I just remember looking down the aisle or looking down the row that I was sitting on at the theater, and all of these people just like the edge of their seat and holding their breath. And when the scary thing that happens, I mean, people just lost their minds. It was so effective. And I just, at the time, like everyone else, I jumped, I was scared. I was like, oh, that was so effective. But in the back of my head, what I was really thinking was, this is what it's about. This is the magic of going to the movies. Like, I mean, the experience of seeing that happen with a crowd of people, of complete strangers who are all just sharing this moment in time, so different than watching it from your couch at home.
Yeah. And despite my continuous love of Hereditary, neither of us are actually big horror fans. But since we love audience reactions so much, you'd think we'd go see more of them in the theater.
I know. If we were smarter, we probably would.
Yeah, but that's not ever going to happen. So.
Never been smart.
Yeah. All right, last segment coming up. We'll talk about some trailers. Trailer segment. Insert clever sounder here. Trailer segment.
Really hope we cut all that out first.
Yeah. It's probably not going to be me saying trailer segment. All right.
Oh, I'm in charge of editing. It will be that.
Night School. So Kevin Hart and Tiffany Haddish in a zany comedy. And Tiffany Haddish amuses me. I haven't seen her stand up, but she makes me laugh when I've seen her on TV. This one doesn't really do it for me too much. It's just Kevin Hart being Kevin Hart. Beyond that, I guess I don't have much more to say about it. What did you think of it?
It looks funny. They're probably the two hottest touring comedians at the moment, or at least the two hottest touring comedians who are also making waves as actors. So, I mean, I think it's a brilliant pairing. It's the first time in a while that we've seen Kevin Hart actually be the lead in a film as opposed to being like, the sidekick to the lead.
Right.
So, he's clearly going to try to pull it off so he can take that next step in his career. It looks funny. I'm totally down with it. I don't know that I would go see it in the theater.
Nah.
Might be a good date night movie kind of thing, but
it's probably a crowd pleaser though. Like if you saw it in a packed theater, I'm sure it would be much funnier if you saw it in a packed theater because laughter is contagious. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, again, if we had just listened to our own previous segment, we would probably be like, we should totally see this in a movie theater.
Yes. Don't listen to us. We don't listen to us.
Yeah.
All right. Another one coming up is called Cruise, which I thought was an interesting, different looking. It started out as kind of it looks like a rom-com to start.
Right.
And then it sort of turns into this weird, I don't know, I'm having trouble trying to. It's got a little bit of The Outsiders to it, and a little bit of Jersey Shore. And the guy who is the lead looks so much like Matt Dillon, but like more Italian.
Yes. So that guy, whose name escapes me because, again, don't do research, this is his step into making grown-up movies. That guy has spent years and years on the Disney Channel.
Spencer Boldman.
Yes. And he's one of the Disney kids.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and so this is him doing an adult film, and it's clearly an adult film.
Yeah.
I mean, adult as in probably R-rated.
Yes, probably.
But
with a lot of harsh Italian accents, gabagool, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, a lot of that kind of thing. And I don't mean to knock it down because I think he actually does a really good job. So here's the caveat to this film. It's set in 1987, and what I think is excellent about the trailer is that it feels like a movie from 1987.
Oh, for sure.
The acting, the way he looks, like you said, he looks like Matt Dillon from 1987. Just everything about it. Like, I almost feel like you could take a copy of this movie, you could dump it down to a VHS tape, you could put it into a VHS box, you could go to your buddy's house who loves 80s films, and you could say, did you ever see Cruise? And he'd be like, you mean Tom Cruise? And you'd be like, no, dude, the movie Cruise. Do you remember it? It's one of my favorite movies from back in the day. You'd be like, I don't remember that. And you could pop it in, and he would totally believe that this movie was made in 1987.
Unless he was a Disney fan.
Right,
He'd recognize the star.
God, son of a, there's always a...
Yeah, I mean, it certainly doesn't look like the typical fare. I mean, it seemed like it spanned multiple genres.
Yeah.
And, there was the heavy comedic element. And
I think it turns into a heist film.
Yeah, somehow turns into a heist film. There's a lot of element of danger in it where they're running for their lives. And people love super harsh Italian accents for some reason in movies. So
yeah, they do. So we probably already talked about this movie more than it needs to be talked about. But I just want to say that convincingly portraying a specific era in time is very, very difficult to pull off in a film. It's astounding how few directors can make it work. And I feel like this director has really, really done an excellent job of that. I would be curious to see the film, if for no other reason than to find out who the director is and see if he's somebody we might need to pay attention to in the future.
All right. Next up is Kin. So this is a sci-fi thing.
Yeah.
Where a kid, I'm not making this up, a kid finds a oddly futuristic weapon that...
Ray gun.
Yeah. He finds a ray gun. That's a perfect way to put it. I mean, it looks like a ray gun. And chaos ensues. Everyone's trying to get this thing. They're wondering where it's from.
And he keeps shooting stuff so they can't get it.
Yeah, and they I think make the mistake in the trailer of showing what happens when he actually shoots a person with it, which I was super let down by after they'd built up this ray gun, and it just sort of like knocked the guy back as if like the Incredible Hulk had punched him or something. Like, really, that's all that thing does? Because everything else around it is all super impressive, and like, they have all kinds of effects and like, I have no idea what the gun does. I don't know what the purpose of it is, but when he shot a person, I was very disappointed. It's not how people should be shot in movies these days.
Other interesting feature of that movie is it's called Kin, and it involves the young kid who finds the gun and his older brother, who's, the bad boy, but he's going to help his young brother get out of this trouble. But it's a weird dynamic in that the older brother is some white dude and the young son is an African-American kid.
Yep.
They don't go into that in the trailer. I'm sure they explained it in the movie, but I don't know.
Yeah. You could have called this segment, Chris and Terrence struggle to explain trailers, because I'm not real sure all that was happening there. A rental at best. Yeah. So I don't know. I mentioned while we watched it that I got a little bit of a Looper vibe from it.
That's absolutely, I think that's a great comparison.
Yeah, which, I think a lot of you listening probably loved Looper.
I don't remember it at all.
I didn't love it. People love that movie.
Do they really?
Yeah, there's a lot of people that love it.
When I watched Looper, you know what I thought of? I was like, this is today's version of Highlander.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I can see that.
We are tumbling down a rabbit hole now.
All right, well, I'll try to pull us out of the tailspin. So, last week, we talked about the Wild Boys trailer, which I hope you all listen to it. Well, the one time we want you to listen to us is to see the Wild Boys trailer.
Yeah.
We'll never ask you for anything in the history of the rest of this podcast. We probably will, but just pretend that I said that. So this week, found another trailer sort of in similar vein. It's called The Forbidden Room. Now, this movie was actually made in 2015, and it's actually already available for rent if you want to rent it on iTunes or whatever. So it's not brand new. But in the same vein of the Wild Boys, there's this throwback to the silent era and the sort of the psychedelic 50s, 60s, like what you would think of like pop sci-fi books when they in your brain when they come to life on the screen, has that kind of look to it. And not so much relied on story, but visually, I mean, it looks crazy. I kind of want to rent it to see what it's all about. I wish I could see it on the big screen, but it's already had its run.
It looks batshit crazy.
Yeah.
It does not look good, just crazy.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, I mean, the fact that I'm so interested in the visual aspect of it, I think I'll be able to put aside whatever, story, whatever. Just show me all your crazy, throwback cinephile shots. I want to see what the guy can do. So, yeah, I mean, story-wise, it doesn't seem like it has anything to offer at all, except for, like, old guys in a submarine nibbling pancakes, which I don't... That actually happens in the trailer, so find that.
And that's the only thing in the trailer that you can actually follow.
Right, yeah.
It's like, oh, okay, I get it. They're out of oxygen in the submarine, so they're eating pancakes.
They're sucking
to
pancakes.
Suck the oxygen out of the pancakes.
And then presumably eating the pancakes until some guy comes in from a side window. And they all exclaim, "This is fresh water." I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to know.
Hearing us talk about it, now I do want to watch this.
Yeah, so that one's available to rent if you want to rent it. I'm sure I'll check it out sometime soon just because the little cinephile in me wants to sort of see what sort of crazy stuff he's done in there, because we're both big fans of old classic silent movies, which I guess you and I are going to have a discussion about whether or not to bore people with silent movie talk at some point. I'd love to. Maybe not for a whole show.
Oh, yeah. At the very least, we could maybe, once in a while insert a suggestion for a silent film for, people who might want to dabble in it. And
there's a bunch on Netflix. Like, there's a ton of classic silent films on Netflix that are just there waiting to be watched that I'm sure you don't even know are there.
And there is a handful of home runs. There are silent films that even if you're not the biggest movie fan in the world, but you're like, you know what, I would like to explore that genre of the film world. There are a couple that are virtually guaranteed to be entertaining to you.
Yeah, and if you're into genre and you like sci-fi, that sort of thing, we can point you in the right direction on a couple to check out. So.
Or even, comedies.
Yeah, and horror too.
Absolutely. Historical epics that are worth watching.
I'm sort of like wanting to do this now, but we've come to the end of our show, so we will save this for another time. How's that for a teaser in 2018? Join us in future episodes.
Fantastically smooth.
So we can recommend silent films to you, kids. All right, so...
Okay, well, see you guys. Thanks for checking out this one episode.
Yeah, I think we've worn our welcome this week. Terrence, we will do this again next week. There's nothing worth seeing coming out in theaters this weekend, so we will come up with some fabulous content for you next week. All right, guys, appreciate you listening.
Thanks a lot. Go see BLACKKKLANSMAN.
Yes.